Well, good morning and welcome to Morning Cuppa. It's great to have your company this morning, and welcome to the big table here at the Congregational Life offices here at Wesley Mission. You know, when we moved to this part of the building from another part of the building, we had a new office fit out, the one thing that I asked for that we really needed to have was a big table right in the middle of everything. Because a big table is always in the middle of Jesus's ministry. Again and again, you see Jesus at a big table, and he makes big tables bigger by welcoming people who you wouldn't expect, by welcoming a woman who everyone knows is a sinner, who doesn't belong at the table. He welcomes her in. He's always welcoming people. And in his parables, he talks about a great banquet where the unexpected guests are the ones who are welcomed in to share. He ends his ministry. His ministry culminates around a table with his disciples as he faces the cross. A table is always a big part of Jesus' ministry, and I am really grateful that we have a table here. Because I have seen so many amazing things around this table. I've seen little children gathered around this table with arts and crafts projects and lots of glitter all over the place and big mess. I have seen people opening the Word, adults gathered around this table with the Word open in front of them. I've seen youth gathered around with their food and with guitars and song and praise and prayer. I've week after week seen my colleagues, ministers and pastors and chaplains at Wesley Mission gathering around this table, sharing life together, sharing ministry together. It's a really important place for me. It's a hard place right now because we just have a few chairs around it, like so many tables around the city, around the world. We can't gather around it the way that we normally did. Right now, it's a quiet table. So I'm glad that you can join me here, but I also want to think about the day when we're able to gather around tables again. I want to think about what that's going to be for us. When we're able to gather around dining tables again, or working tables, or craft tables, or all different kinds of tables, when we're able to gather around the Lord's table again, physically, to gather around the Lord's table, to celebrate his body broken, his blood shed, his presence with us. That's the celebration that Jesus brings to the table. Whatever kind of table it is, that's the celebration that he brings. He brings his presence to the table. And he brings us into his presence. That's the amazing thing about all these tables in Jesus' ministry, is how he brings us, whoever we are, to the table. I think about the parable of the lost son who comes home to his father's house, and where is he welcomed? He's welcomed to a table, to a banquet with a fatted calf, and everybody's gathered around the table. The whole household, the servants, the family, everybody's gathered around the table, except for one person. The older son, who's standing out in the field, he refuses to come into the celebration. He refuses to sit at the table. He's not going to sit at the table with this son of his father's. After all he's done, he's not going to sit at the table. I raise that because when we're able to gather around tables again, we might be surprised at who Jesus is inviting to the table. We might be uncomfortable with who Jesus is inviting to the table. We see that pattern through his ministry and through his teaching. So we shouldn't be surprised if we find that to be the case, because the table is not our table to invite Jesus to. It's his table. He issues the invitations. And he invites people who we might not want to invite, who we might not be comfortable sitting at the table with, who we might not understand, we might not want to understand. And he invites us together with people who might not want us at the table. He issues the invitations. I think about his early on in his ministry when he invited fishermen to follow him, to be part of his ministry, to share every day together with him, learning from him, growing in him. They shared every meal around a table with Jesus. Imagine that privilege. Imagine that extraordinary opportunity to share every meal with Jesus for years. But early on, when those fishermen started eating around the table with Jesus, they started to get the idea that Jesus has maybe a different invitation list than they would have, because after he had invited those fishermen, who was the first person he invited to join their group? A tax collector. A tax collector. Somebody, maybe that doesn't mean a lot to you, a tax collector. It doesn't send chills up your spine. But for these fishermen, it would have. Can you imagine an occupying army rolling into your city? Imagine that an occupying foreign power occupies your city. The tanks roll through the streets. The soldiers are kicking in doors. People are being taken away. This is what happened when Rome took over. And they recruited locals to help them with the occupation, to help fund the occupation by putting pressure on their neighbors to pay up. And the way they did it is they said, anybody who wants to help us, you can skim some off the top for yourself. You pay what you get, you collect what we need to fund the occupation, and as much more as you can collect is fine with us. You go ahead and get rich, as long as we get our cut. And that's what they did. So I'm asking you, if that army rolled into your city and they put up a notice that anyone who'd like to help us with the occupation will make it worth your while, would you put your hand up and say, oh yeah, I'd like to be part of that. I'll take that job? Of course you wouldn't. Of course you wouldn't. Now, what would you think about your neighbor who looked and said, oh yeah, I'll take that job? Better to be on the side of the oppressors than the oppressed. How would you feel about that person? How would you feel about somebody who sold out your people for his own personal interests? Who took food off your table for his own luxury? How would you feel about him? Now, how would you feel if the person you were following said, and now this person's going to be part of us. This person's going to share every meal with us. This person is one of you. How would you feel? That's the kind of table that Jesus has in store for us. It's a table that's going to include people we wouldn't imagine sitting with. People who we don't want to sit with. People we can't imagine why we would belong with them. But we belong together because together we belong to Christ. He issues the invitations to his table. And so I just wanted to share that with you as I look at the table that he is preparing before us. In the presence of the enemies of despair, and of fear and of anger and bitterness. And I pray that goodness and mercy would follow us all the days of our life, that we would dwell in the house of the Lord forever, that you would have a hope-filled day. God bless you.